Alright, so in this video we're not going to do any programming and we're just going to talk about a tool that I use called Figma. And it's basically what I use to design all of my thumbnails for my YouTube channel, for example, like these ones that in my opinion I think they look pretty good. But yeah, so we're just going to show you how to use it. And essentially, like, one of the things that I love about it is that it is free and you can also just use it on the internet for free, and you can access it on any device. So yeah, you can just click the login or sign up button, click that, login with Google. So you can see that here I have a bunch of other stuff that I made, but you can just click the new design file. Wait for it to load, and it says if you see this, that's good. Okay, so here's what you should see at first. The first thing we're gonna do is create a frame, and you can just do that by pressing this, or just pressing the letter F without any like modifiers. And after we've done this, let's just first of all go over all of the controls first. If you scroll, it goes up and down. If you hold the shift key, it goes left and right. If you use the command key or the control key, it zooms in and out. So that's basically the navigations for all of this. And now let's just create some shape. The first shape you can create is called a rectangle, which you can do by pressing the R key. You can drag it around just simply like that, and you can see that it snaps very nicely. First thing you might notice is that these circle things, and you can just drag these to make rounded corners. And just like that, it's very easy. If you hold the Alt key while you're dragging, it just drags one of the corners individually. Great. And now let's just turn our attention to the right side where we have this. Here we can have like better control of like the exact position of everything, I guess. With like X and Y and the width. So if you don't want to to drag it, you can also use these like values to enter them precisely. So for example, if you want a 2200 by 200 cube, you can do that. And now to the next thing, we have these like constraints, and if you click them, it will do that. So basically what is happening is that if you have constraints to the right side, if you drag it, it just does that. For now it is constrained to the top and left, so if you drag this corner, it constrains it to that. Now let's see what happens if we click the middle thing, center and the top center. So if we do center, what it does is basically keeps it at the middle and just like anchors it to the middle of the frame. And now whenever you resize it, it will always be in the middle. What you can also do is that here, if you click these keys, just like click the shift key and just do that. Now if you drag it, it basically pins it to every single side, kind of like there's a bit of padding on each side. So this is useful if you want to make something that resizes nicely. Now we can go over these things. So this is basically how it passes through the other side. This you probably won't use too much, and you can just leave it on normal pass through, I believe. This is a fill color. You can just change the color here. Make it darker, you know how to use a color picker probably. Now if you change the hue, it just changes the hue. You can pick it like that. And this slider is for the opacity, so it just looks like it's getting lighter. That's because it's a light background. But if you were to make another triangle, for example, drag it to put it on the bottom. Now if you go back to the first triangle with the opacity, if you slide it up, you can see it kind of through it. And that's basically what opacity does. Now let's just keep it at 50%. Here we also have a stroke. You can drag this to change a stroke width. And here we have the drop down that's inside or outside. So if we choose outside, it goes out of the thing. If we choose the center, it just places it in the middle, and inside is inside the borders. And I find that inside is useful if you want to like make the sides a certain size without it having to go overlap. And if you have rounded corners, sometimes outside is better, so it keeps the rounded corners. And now we have the effects thing. If you click effects, it adds a drop shadow, and drop shadow does exactly what you think it does. It just adds a shadow to the bottom like that. There are other effects, for example, inner drop shadow, which adds a shadow to the inside. You have what else? You can add multiple effects. You can have a layer blur, and layer blur essentially just blurs the layer itself like that. Or you can have background blur. And background blur, you can see on the back rectangle. If you blur this, the layer itself doesn't blur, but whatever is on the behind it blurs. Great. So this is essentially basic commands. Also with the fill, you can add another color, and it by default adds a linear gradient. And with this gradient, you can gradient between two colors. You can drag this around. You change the colors. Okay, so how about now we just delete everything first, and let's just start something again. You can see that on the side, it actually gives you some options, and you can click, like, for example, iPhone 11 Pro Max, and it basically gives you the frame as the exact same size as that. So how about, like, now let's just, for example, create a website that's for an iPhone, for example. If you press the T key, it is basically adding a text, and if you can add the text like that. So let's just look at the text options. Let's say here you can change the size of the text, and most of the time you should use the font size, and don't touch this because this just resizes the text box itself and not the text. And you can change the regular black, bold, thin, so the font weight. And here you have some options about, like, the line height, the alignment to the center or to the left. And here you have the same effects, except now fill kind of affects the text color, and stroke is you can have the ability to add a stroke like that. So you might find that useful, you might not. Effects, same thing, you can add a drop shadow, and you can add whatever you want. We already went over that. So let's say we want to make the same thing as my previous tutorial. Let's just make a pizza recipe. And you can see that here it gives you a bunch of different fonts. You can have a lot of fonts to choose from, or you can just type the font and it will auto-complete it for you. Here we can have this thing, and then let's say we can add another piece of text here. So I don't know, May, today is 10th, 2021. So if we do that, we can change the font size to be smaller now. Maybe that's too small, 11 pixels, alright. And let's just use the Roboto font this time. Make it light, and make the font color gray. So you can see now, like, how when we use these, like, Figma is a really great tool for doing these types of stuff. If you press R, you can quickly drag out a header, and maybe this time we want to make the header something like a black color. Make a text, home, select everything, make it white. Great. So now if you drag it, you can align it to the side like that. Maybe perhaps make the font a bit bigger, and instead of light, we just make it medium. And create a rectangle, we can make it like this. And you can see we can drag a border radius, or the corner radius, whatever you call it, but basically mix it around it. Something to note for rounded rectangles is that when you zoom in here, for example, you can see that it looks not completely round. I don't know how to describe it, but basically if you click expand here and then click the three dots, there's this thing called corner smoothing. And basically, if you click this, you can see the corners, the smoothness, and if you drag it a bit, you can see that the rounded corners become slightly more rounded or more smooth. So I would say that's pretty cool. You can make the button, I don't know, let's just say we can make it a white color with the text here, and you can just snap it to the middle. You can see that the text seems to be behind the rectangle, and that's because if you look at the sidebar, the text is like under it. If you drag it over the top here like that, now it should be over it. And if you just make the font, change the font a bit, and then drag it down, you can see that that works perfectly. Normally I would say that the font size on here is a bit too big, or the button might be too small, so you can just increase the button a bit. And maybe you want to group the button together, because now it's just a rectangle and a piece of text. If you hold the command key or the control key and then press G, it groups it together and makes it called group 1. And now you can just drag both of them together and drag it like that. Let's change the name of this and name it something like login. So you can see that now we can make something that looks really good and relatively quickly, and this is why I like to use something like Figma. If you press the L key or just click that, you can make a line. So maybe you want a divider for, I don't know, something. divider, you can make the color a bit grayer. This is some random piece of text. You can pretend that this is a paragraph. And you can see that now it overflows the page, and something you can do to fix that is by just simply dragging this over like that. You can also Google some stuff like, I don't know, pizza. If you just Google that, get some images. I don't know, for example, like right click, copy image, and you can just paste it into Figma just like that. It's pretty simple. And you can just resize it and make it something like this. Of course, like the biggest part of design is learning how to do design, and right, so basically you have to know how to design it, but this video I'm just gonna mainly teach you how to use stuff of the software. And yeah, you can just like drag whatever images here, and you can see, perfect design, perfect, absolutely amazing. Oh, and you can see that the image here is apparently not in the frame for some reason. You can just drag it inside like that, and now you have something that is as good as most websites. Great. So how about we make another design? For example, maybe we want to this time make some I don't know, desktop. Let's see what, okay, it only has like MacBook Pro. Let's just create that now. So you can just do the same thing. Let's just create Mac OS, for example. Just Google some wallpaper, some sort of random wallpaper. You probably shouldn't like steal images off google.com when you're actually doing designs. For now, like something like this is perfectly fine. Create a rectangle. Let's just create a menu bar of this. You can see we should probably make it black, but change its opacity to be pretty low. And with macOS, there's always like tons of background blur, so we can just click the icon and drag it all the way up, and we basically have created the menu bar. Mess with some stuff, and yeah, I basically learned this software on my own also by just like installing it and clicking random buttons, so I also just encourage you to do that. I think this is a pretty good way of learning. Let's create a window now. Make the window white, add a bit of border radius, something like that. And also macOS and iOS also have this like smooth corner thing. I can just drag it to the point where it says iOS. Great. So how about let's just create Command D to duplicate this. Create a sidebar here. So we have two rectangles, and then here. And because we want to join them together, we can hold the Alt key and resize. I said resize, okay. Resize these corners so they join together nicely. But we want to leave all the corners rounded. And now we can move this, change the opacity of the sidebar here, add effects, whatever, background blur, and just makes the blur much more. So you can see how like we can pretty quickly create some prototypes of your designs of apps, websites, and anything in Figma. Okay, let's create something else. Just slide over a bit, and this time I'm going to do something that's more, I guess, abstract. So let's just start with something, a white thing, and let's insert ellipse, or you can just press O, which is shaped like a circle. I'm just going to draw something in the middle, fill it to this nice pink color maybe. And you can see that there's a dot, and let's just try dragging it. Yay, it becomes Pac-Man. And now there's 3 more dots. If you drag this dot, you can change the angle of this. And this one changes the angle, I guess, of that. The middle dot, you can make it like a loop. And I found that you can actually just close it like that, and now you have this weird loop thingy. And we can just, I don't know, add some random effects to this, add a bit of blur, makes the blur bigger, I don't move it to the side, and you can make it red to make it like a glow. So, with this software you can also do whatever you want. How about let's just create some other color. And now we can also just drag this dot to make it more, yeah. I don't know what I'm making, but it's some random abstract thing, I guess. Let's just say this is a very abstract pizza. Yeah, sure. So the red is the crust, and this would be pepperoni. But for some reason, pepperoni is orange. But maybe you want to cut a hole, so what you can actually also do is that if you select this thing, right, while holding the shift key, you can select both of them, and now you can drag both of them around, or you can on the bottom top, you can do this. So you can say intersect selection, which is the intersection of them. You can say exclude, and that makes thing, or in this case, we can look to subtract. And with subtract, you can see that now what it does is that it creates a hole in both of them. And now it's not like a permanent thing, you can still go and edit this thing and drag that around. So I find that pretty cool, and you can also just choose to duplicate this and make it something that looks like cheese or something. If you press the Alt key, every time you drag it creates a new one. So that's pretty cool. Let's make this 3D, or at least like a 3D-ish effect. So add an inner shadow. Inner shadows usually makes it look like it's like indented, but if you drag that Y to the negative so that it's on the bottom, you can see that it looks like, and you can add another shadow, and this time you make it like a bit lighter, so that gives it both kind of like this color. You can add another gradient with the opacity of it, I don't know, being reduced slightly, so yeah, you can just do stuff like that. Let's see some other shapes. Polygons. You can drag this, you can make some whatever gon, you can make it a hexagon, because hexagons are the bestagons. Yeah, let's just place a hexagon in the center, making some random color. And now you have some weird abstract design. So this is basically where I'm gonna end this tutorial, because as I said a lot of times already, the main part of design is not the software. It's like, I would guess you can get a feel of how to use stuff. And this isn't really a tutorial for how to do good design. I might do a few tutorials on that, but for now, this tutorial will just be only on the software. And this is essentially the main part of the software. And to wrap stuff up, you can use the export button, and if you use export frame 2, it just downloads it for you as a PNG. Or you can change it to like a vector or a JPEG or whatever you want. So thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and see you next time.